So I'm Gayle Hardie,
And I'm Malcolm Lazenby.
and together we're the co-founders of Global Leadership Foundation. We established Global Leadership Foundation in 2003, and it'd be nice for Malcolm to tell a little bit of the story around that. Initially and importantly, the reason we came together was that we could see the opportunity to really support the development of emotional health, particularly in leaders in organisations. There's a little bit of a story behind it, and it's good to understand that so that you can get to know us.
There were a number of things that came together when we created Global Leadership Foundation. And so Gayle and I had known one another for 9 years, I think, before we actually created Global Leadership Foundation. And it really was born out of the fact that we started working together as consultants from separate companies, but with the same client. And then as a result of that celebration, I actually bought a lottery ticket to celebrate the fact that we were working together. And we went to a restaurant after having done some work with a client, and I asked Gayle, if we won the lottery, what would we do?
I said, why not set up an organisation where we actually support the development of leaders in community? And the next bit is history, because within 24 hours, we've established the organisation.
And so Global Leadership Foundation was important for a number of reasons, because we founded it on what we talk about is quantum think principles. So we were going to experiment in a quantum world using quantum ideas to create something that we felt hadn't really been created before. And it was through that interaction of saying, okay, so what does that look like? And we had some very clear things to start with. So we had an intent we wanted for the organisation. We had a vision, which was about raising emotional health levels of people on the planet. We had 3 guiding principles: self-realisation, collaboration, and stewardship.
And for us, those 3 principles have guided everything we've done up until today. So we still hold dear the importance of your own development. So if we don't show up in an emotionally healthy way, we can't expect anybody else to be in that same space. So the work is really important for us as well as for our clients and our fellows and friends across the globe. The second one, collaboration, is a question we always hold: what can we do together that we can't do apart? And so for us, the whole idea of no competition, of collaboration, of abundance, of being able to work with others to achieve emotionally healthy people across the planet is really important. And the final one, stewardship, was really about taking all of that and moving to a place where we can support society, community, the world, the planet itself. How do we create a sustainable, emotionally healthy way of living?
So one of our key strategies has been to work with leaders in organisations. And part of the reason behind that is that leaders create an environment for other people to, I'm going to say, work and live in. And so by creating a good environment, we can help raise emotional health levels of a greater number of people. So it has a greater impact by working with leaders in organisations. And as part of that, or the extension, is to grow the organisational culture in a way that really enables people's emotional health to be improved and increased.
So we didn't win the lottery, but what we did do that day was set up Global Leadership Foundation, and 20 years later have a collective organisation that's global. We have fellows and friends, over 30 fellows across the world, and those fellows and friends come together to work with clients globally when the need arises. They all have their own organisations, and our Italian fellows, Marina and Chiara, established Global Leadership Foundation Italy. And so we're honoured and really pleased to know that the work will continue. The work that we started just as a germ of an idea one day at the end of a client meeting becomes an organisation that will live forever.
As part of our journey, we've looked to I guess, be the best version of ourselves we can be. And so I'm going to say, on one hand, Gayle and I have been very lucky and being exposed to a lot of different leadership thinking and different concepts. However, one of the most important things was being exposed to was what we talk about, vertical levels of development. And we talk about emotional health levels. And for both of us, that was part of our inner development goal, in being able to move up these emotional health levels to be the best version of ourselves that we can be. And so we've had a real focus on that from a personal point of view in trying to, grow ourselves. However, we could also see and feel the benefit for us and then say, so how do we help others or support others to be able to do a similar thing?
So to give you a sense of emotional health and be clear about what we mean, it's an enhanced state of well-being. It comes from mindful practices, it comes from conscious choices, and it comes from respectful relationships. So in looking at emotional health, what we're looking at is the integration of all of that into a whole person. So we're not just good with people, we're not just making choices, we're not just physically well, we're bringing all of that together in a way that creates a whole person. And emotional health is about the whole person.
I think the other thing that's important is that people, I'm going to say, intuitively understand what we talk about when we talk about emotional health. It never has needed any great explanation to understand a little bit about, so what does emotional health mean? And it is actually about understanding what's going on for us holistically. We'll talk about head, heart and body and what that means for us and how we, I'm going to say, make conscious choices about the things we do and the impact we have.
I think the other thing that is quite different and what emotional health looks at is, as those three centres are integrated, we move up the health levels and become more present. In emotional intelligence, the discussion about presence isn't necessarily there. It's not part of the model. And yet what we know is that when we are emotionally aware and empathic, then there's a sense of being drawn closer to others to better understand people. But it doesn't necessarily mean we become more present. So for us, the other really defining piece around emotional health is that it's about moving up those vertical levels of development to a point where we are in presence. And a very different concept from what emotional intelligence offers.
And I think to add to that, we talk about presence, but I think sometimes using the sporting analogy is a good way of helping everybody understand what that is, because when we talk to sports people, and particularly elite sports people, they will talk about getting into a different psychological state where they can perform at outstanding levels. In fact, they'll often say, I can't believe what I've achieved. I feel like I could do it again. I've heard marathon runners say, I've just done one and I could do another. So there's something different about the psychological state. And in the sporting world, we often refer to it as being in flow or being in zone. And of course, we refer to it as presence. However, it's the same psychological state. However, it's good to, language is really important for us to understand the connection of what this looks like. Now, these things are outside the emotional intelligence model. However, what I can say to you is that as we move up the emotional health levels, our emotional intelligence will also increase.
This was integral to the work, and in fact, the conversation we had the night that we set Global Leadership Foundation up, I'd just come back from a project where I was a participant along with 9 other senior leaders in being a volunteer on a scientific project in the desert. And what was really, really interesting is, as we spent more and more time disconnected from things like technology, from worrying about what was going to happen to our key success factors in the organisation, where we were talking about measurement. We were literally working in a desert, very much around supporting endangered species, people started to get perspective. What we noticed was that people started to realise that their problems paled into insignificance when they were in that environment. And what I could see was, as we were talking about what was important, purpose and meaning started to come into the conversation. People started to talk about the greater good, a bigger picture. And what we know is when we're at that level of emotional health, our effectiveness as leaders is almost 5 times what it would be if we weren't. So we know that when emotional health is reasonably high, our effectiveness in terms of the way we lead and engage others, the way we see the world, what is important, becomes more than what does it mean for me as a leader? How am I going to measure success? We literally step into a world where the greater good and being of service, not being a martyr, being of service to society or to the planet, is much easier to see and to be with. So effectiveness and leadership and emotional health, and we've been measuring that now for 20 years, shows us that the more emotionally healthy you are, the more effective you are in leading and engaging others.
I think the other piece that was clear for us too is that as we move up the emotional health levels, we let go of our defence mechanisms. And this actually enables us to have a greater choice of behavioural freedom, which I think is what delivers on the effectiveness. So, often we get attached to defence mechanisms to help make us feel safe. However, they don't have necessarily the right impact when we're in those defensive modes. And so that has a negative aspect for the people we're dealing with. So I think as we move up emotional health levels, we are much more conscious about the impact we have and being flexible in how we approach things to get the best outcome and the best impact that we want.
One of the really important parts of Global Leadership Foundation is the group of people we work with. We don't employ anyone. We never have. And our intention was that we would always be able to find like-minded people across the planet to support us in the work we do. And that has happened. We happen to have met one of the co-founders of Global Leadership Foundation, Italy, Marina. We met her in America. So nowhere near Italy. Chiara we met because of Marina and in Italy. So what we know is that when like-minded people, that is, people who really are committed to raising the emotional health levels of leaders and people on the planet, when they appear, we take notice. That's one of the quantum principles, that we allow the opportunity to unfold. And the gift of Global Leadership Foundation Italy is that it has unfolded. The opportunity to bring our thinking and our experience into the space is meshed and melded with the experience that Marina and Chiara bring to the space. This is not about Gayle and Malcolm, the gurus. This is about Gayle and Malcolm with a story and a way of seeing the world that meshes with the way that Chiara and Marina work in the world. So for us, we're learning all the time. Just this morning, we had a conversation that really enables us to see the potential of some of the programs and work we do and how it gets offered in this environment. So for us, no competition, total abundance, and the gift of working with people who truly are emotionally healthy. It's a joy to work in a space where people can see the bigger picture and why we're here.
And there are a couple of places I'd like to add. I think it's the passion that both Marina and Chiara bring. And I say this is not just a passion about raising emotional health levels for people on the planet, but it's also a passion to be the best version of themselves as well.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that our fellows all have in common, is that they're all on the journey together, and there's something about sharing the pathways and their learnings with others so that others may follow in our footsteps. and follow may not be the right word. I think potentially it could be join us on the pathway to get to where we're trying to get to. That is a very good question. I think when we talk about raising emotional health levels of the planet, we're actually referring, ironically, to people who are living on the planet. However, our health of our planet is determined by, I'm going to say us, by people on the planet. So I think it's twofold here. On one hand, we need people to be really focused on living in a healthy environment and looking after our planet for all future generations. However, as in doing that, we as people and individuals also need to be emotionally healthy, so it becomes part of what we do and is important for us. And I think it can be a challenge because sometimes we find that our environment perhaps is not conducive to being moved up the emotional health levels because we're trying to survive. Because in our environment of what's going on around us, we're more focused on where am I going to get my next meal? How am I going to get past the next day? And so there's something that also needs to happen globally where we're actually taking care of one another much more than we currently do. And this is something that emotionally healthy leaders and people do. So this is something about a collective and working together. I think the stewardship component that we spoke about before as one of our guiding principles is really important when we start to think of the planet and people.
When I mentioned before about the leaders in the group I was with saying, my problems are absolutely insignificant in comparison to what I'm seeing here. When that realization occurs, something changes in the way we see the world. So we don't see ourselves as separate from the world. We see ourselves as part of it. And that's the dilemma I think we're experiencing right now, where there is such separation from things like nature, the way the climate is, the crisis that we have with the climate, the fires, the floods. What that causes people to do is try and stay safe rather than look at what's going on. So there's something right now for us where we're encouraging those people who are emotionally healthy or want to be emotionally healthy to think outside the square of what does it mean for me, but to think right into what does it mean for others, what does it mean for my society, my community, what does it mean for my country, what does it mean for the planet.